What's up, guys and gals? It's your What's up, guys and gals? It's your host with the most, Griever, as always, bringing you guys the latest chapter review for Jujutsu Kaisen, chapter 206. And all right, let's be talking. Let's be talking about what type of man is Yuki into. Because that bloody, muddy, and sweaty type of man is what's coming down in this chapter. So we start this chapter off. This is actually a pretty good chapter. It's a very interesting chapter because it confirms, I think it really confirms a couple of things. It does confirm that there are such domains that don't have a natural barrier. They're barrierless, so to speak. And I'm not sure exactly how this worked. I mean, I'm sure someone will explain it down in the comment section down below. But the whole idea, starting off with this chapter, was we're going to dismantle and destroy Kenjaku's domain, and that's our opportunity to strike. That's our plan. That plan worked, but it also didn't work if I fully understand it. So pretty much that's the idea, right? So, and it's to make, because remember the entire thing that I didn't like last chapter is all but confirmed this chapter, because Yuki even says, like, am I being thought of like too weakly sort of idea? Because Kenjaku theorizes or brings up the fact that you didn't activate your domain because you're scared to, because in a battle of domains I'm going to win, blah 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 blah. He was talking all this smack, and I said that doesn't make, his conclusions don't make a whole lot of sense. Now people pointed out, yeah, they sort of do. No, they don't. Kenjaku's just a cocky son of a bitch, because Yuki even says, like, why don't I just activate my domain first and do all this stuff? Now, the reason that they're not doing this is they're trying to make Kenjaku as vulnerable as possible. They want him to use his domain, which we know uses a lot of, your energy, but also the curse technique and stuff, to time to reset. They want to use it, don't have anybody die within the domain, and then be able to lay a beat down upon him while he's still recovering, so to speak. So the strategy makes sense, but I just want a quick call back to that from the last chapter, because I still think I was kind of right. Kenjaku jumped the gun and was a little too cocky about his, I'm Sosuke motherfucking Aizen, or Kisuke Urahara, and I have seen 1,000 exact ways that this can go down, and the conclusion I have reached is like, dude, you might be a good villain, but you're not like that, alright? So stop pretending you are, because you're just going to keep getting caught with your pants down like you do at the end of this chapter, right? So though he was Kenjaku did have his moments also in this chapter, which were good shit-talking moments as well, and feet-showing moments as well. So it was a good mix. It was a mixed bag of a chapter, if you want to use that term. So pretty much talking about barrier techniques and yada yada yada, all in the flashback. Basically, the flashback simply says he's going to make a domain, and Tengen is going to attack the domain, the sure hit thing, blah 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 blah. And he said, so we're going to negate this domain in 10 seconds. We're going to destroy it because it's within my barrier, and it's still my barrier, and I'll be able to instantly understand his domain and get all the information, and I'll be able to neutralize it once he builds his own barrier within this barrier, sort of idea, right? Which is something that he's cocky and overconfident with, which is shown because he does activate the barrier. The problem is, and by the way, Yuki with the ponytail, drippy. The problem with this is that they go through the different strategies, like her using her domain first, and there's also Choso and Garuda there and stuff like that. Even if I get burnt out or something like that, Kenjaku's still exhausted, the domain is still gone, there's still an opportunity there, and basically it's brought up that he could just use a simple domain as well. He used Hollow Wicker Basket. Now, I don't remember if this was ever brought up before. If it was, and I'm sure it was when they explained simple domains the first time, I didn't get it. I thought the idea of simple domain was for people who didn't have their own domain. And it makes sense, but I guess I just figured that people couldn't just use simple domain while having another domain. If you get a domain, if you have your own domain, you can't use simple domain. Simple domain is for people who don't have a domain expansion tied to their curse technique. it appears that is false because both Kenjaku and Yuki, who both have their own unique domains, can also have access to simple domains. And Tengen brings this up, that he could simply use that to not reveal his hand and all this stuff, right? So we're back at the fact that we need to get Kenjaku to expand his domain so Tengen can dismantle it. Now, the problem is, and it's just done very well, after this whole flashback sequence, it's only a few pages, miscalculation. And it's like, okay, we're gonna have that. Are we gonna have that Suzumibachi shit from fake Karakura Town arc, or is that what we're gonna do? Is be like, you believe that you knew all this, but in fact, I was one step ahead of you. Are we gonna do the puppet master sort of idea? So we go into it. We get this thing that nobody wants to pronounce, the Garba Hata Hara 2, the really creepy, stitched up faces and wombs domain expansion by Kenjaku, right? He does use it, but it's barrierless. It's a domain like the one Sukuna used, and Tengen acknowledges this, is expanding the domain and activating a technique in an unclosed barrier, and it's an absolutely amazing feat. So the exterior that needs to be dismantled, so to disrupt it and stuff, does not exist. Yuki, of course, doesn't realize that the plan has changed, I don't believe, because she just still goes in, instead of using her own domain, she does use simple domain. And then all of a sudden realizes that the barrier is super strong and simple domain isn't going to hold out for even, because Tengen needs at least 10 seconds. And that's when the plan was going to work. That's when the plan was to attack the barrier that he erects around the domain expansion. But he never did that. So, big issue here. She's still going on the plan that's going to work. And I'm thinking, holy shit, what is going on? So, either way, Yuki decides to rush him anyways. But then we see that that his domain is still being eaten away. And Kenjaku acknowledges this and says, I see what you're doing. It's an outdated strategy, and stuff like that, but I see what you're doing. But it seemingly is working. So the problem is, I guess, the amount of time it takes or something like that, because it sounds like it would take 10 seconds if it was just if it was a regular type of domain, but this one, it's still happening. Tengen is still dismantling the domain expansion by the looks of this panel. It's just taking a lot longer, right? Sort of like estimated time versus actual arrival time in the airports and stuff, right? It's that's not always the case, right? So, and it usually almost never truly syncs up. So, either way, Tengen continues to try to erase this thing, but then Kenjaku ends up still seemingly using the domain and slams. I don't think he physically slams his hand into Yuki's head, though it sort of looks like that, because he raises his hand like a karate chop, and then smack, and then this big gravity thing, boom. I think it's literally just the gravity. He allows the entire thing to fall apart and stuff, and as he brings his hand down, it's just everything in his pathway, like Yuki hadn't even reached him yet, and it's boom, here's your gravity, slam. And of course, because the domain expansion would be similar to the curse technique, and boom, down goes Yuki, and then the barrier, and Kenjaku acknowledges that you dismantled my domain and the barrier you erected. So still managed even without so it was a miscalculation, of course, so that term's not wrong, but the fact of the matter is that this barrierless domain expansion still did get dismantled. It wasn't so it was still Tengen, it's just it shook him up, or shook her up, I should say, because Tengen's a woman, I guess. Took her a lot longer. It looked like it took 10 seconds to me, but it must have been longer than that, at least a minute, I guess. So, at the end part of this, Yuki's lying on the ground, covered in blood. She's down and out and stuff. Kenjaku mentions if this was the end of the fight, I would argue that, yeah, they should have had some type of constant communication set up or something like that to know that the plan was a bust and to not use simple domain and to use her true and her own domain. Now, granted, could she get up and use her own domain after using simple domain? Very unlikely, because unlike someone like Yuta, who could probably do that after only a couple of minutes, there's got to be a recovery time even for simple domain, and unless you have Yuta's boundless cursed energy or Gojo's 6 infinity and stuff, then you can't just keep spamming domain expansion. It don't work like that, right? So Kenjaku basically mentions that you should have used your own domain and it might have been funner. Apparently there's a secret about the culling game we're not aware of, but then boom, the Garuda is still here and Yuki gets up, bloody and beaten, and they start pressuring Kenjaku and trying to beat the living shit out of him. And they seem to actually have him on the ropes. From a martial arts perspective, from an actual up close and personal fist fight, Kenjaku, of course, even without, because at first when I read this chapter, I said, why is he able to take any of this? What about the mass ability, right? And I was like, well, wait a minute now. She used a domain. Her curse technique is down and out for a little while and stuff like that. Because even when you use simple domain, I believe there's the lack of curse technique for that little bit. So she's going to use, so he assumes that she's got reverse curse technique. She's going to use the time to heal herself while allowing the Shikigami, allowing Garuda to attack and buy some time. But no, she's not going to do that. And he's like, oh, for God's sakes, would you heal yourself? And she's like, hell fucking no, smiling, covered in blood. And she's like, no, I'm not giving you a chance to even have a moment to recover. I'm just going to keep whacking you down. So seemingly does have the upper hand, especially with Garuda helping her out, even in the state she's in. But unfortunately, it's too much for her, and she misses an opportunity to really smack him down. She ends up coughing up a lot more blood. She took a lot of damage from that domain expansion hit. Not surprising. She's probably got a bunch of shattered bones. Her arm is totally fucked. I'm surprised that it did not one-shot her. Like, she's strong enough to take Kenjaku's domain expansion attack and not die is impressive enough. And then at the very end of the chapter, it's absolutely fantastic because we get the did you forget that I like a man? My type of man is one who's hardworking and muddy. And boom, in comes Choso with another one of his blood supernova crazy attacks. In comes Choso for a close right behind him attack. And you know what? I doubt Kenjaku is going to lose here. I really do. I think I'm seeing some death flags for Choso and Yuki. I am seeing the death flags for the three that are trying to fight him, Tengen, Yuki, and Choso. I am seeing the death flags. I'm just hoping that they do get a one-up because Kenjaku has been legitimately surprised and taken unawares in this fight. Since he first got here, he has not been the be-all and end-all. He has been like, wait, what? What are we doing? And he has taken damage and he has taken hits. And he did do what they expected him to do, which was to use his domain. And now, boom, incoming. I do hope this attack lands. I do hope it does some damage. Is it going to kill Kenjaku? Absolutely not. But it'd be cool if it did. But I really wanted to do some lasting damage to Kenjaku. I don't want him to walk away from this fight unscathed. How's that? Or with some slight bruising, you know what I mean? I want him to sort of be like, damn, it's going to take me, even me with reverse curse technique, it's going to take me at least a day once I get out of here, or something like that. I don't know how they want to word it, but I definitely want that, because this was quite a good chapter overall. But yeah, and I do like the back and forth. Kenjaku getting cocky, being like, old Tengen, you are so out of date with your strategy. I'm not a shut-in like you and any of that stuff. And then talking down to Yuki after hitting her with the gravity attack from the domain expansion, and basically being like, you could have made this more entertaining for me had you used your actual domain. You still would have lost, of course. He's talking this shit, he's talking the smack. So I like when he gets smacked around, I like when things take him by surprise, because it's nice to see, shoes on the other foot now, motherfucker, sort of mentality. So we're just going to have to wait and see. There is a break next week, so no Chapter 207 next week, so we're going to have to wait till the week after to see what goes down with Star and Oil Part 3, I believe is probably going to be called. And I believe whatever the result may be, I believe the next chapter will be the end of the fight, so to speak. But we'll have to wait and see. I could be wrong about that. But anyways, that's Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter 206, review from your host, Griever, as always. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to like, comment, and subscribe. Drink responsibly, as always, and we will see you beautiful people back here once again. As I said, break next week, but the following week we will be here, of course, to read more Chapter 207 of Jujutsu Kaisen. Looking forward to it. I know you guys are too. We'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.